The truck was already moving when Dell Morrow made the worst decision of his life. Not speeding, not swerving, just rolling slow out of a Flying J parking lot at 2:47 in the morning, nowhere to be, nobody waiting, thumb hovering over a job posting that made absolutely no sense, and hitting apply anyway. He'd read it 3 times. Then a fourth. The numbers didn't change. $90,000. 1 delivery. Refrigerated haul. Fresh game meat from Cutter Basin, Montana to a drop point in the Black Pine Wilderness, Oregon. No company name. No logo. A username created 6 days ago. And a list of conditions that should have made him close the app and go to sleep. He hit apply. The call came at 6:14 that same morning. Dell was on his second coffee, parked, watching the sun come up over nothing in particular. Mr. Morrow. The voice was calm. Too calm, like a man who'd had this conversation many times before. My name is Hale. You responded to our posting. I did, Dell said. 90,000 is a lot for one run. It is, Hale said. We pay for discretion and compliance. Not just driving. Dell turned his coffee cup in his hands. What's the catch? No catch. Conditions. A pause. Are you currently married, Mr. Morrow? Dell almost laughed. Separated. What? Liability documentation. Any dependents living with you? My son lives with his mother. And you're comfortable driving remote Forest Service roads at night? I've driven worse. Do you own any firearms? Dell frowned. No. Should I? Hill didn't answer that directly. We ask that you leave any weapons behind regardless. They won't be necessary, and they complicate things at the destination. Another pause. I'll send the full conditions document to the email you registered. Read everything. If you have questions, call this number before 9 p.m. After that, don't. The line went dead. Dell sat there a moment. Then he opened his email. The document was 2 pages. Typed clean, no letterhead. He read the conditions out loud to himself the way he always processed things that needed to stick. Refrigeration unit off for the entire haul. No stops except 1 fuel top-off before crossing the Oregon state line. Phone off after crossing. A sealed envelope to be opened only at the destination, not before, not during, only at the clearing. At the drop point, cut all lights except the dome, release the trailer doors remotely, stay in the cab, do not exit for any reason, do not speak, do not use the horn, do not attempt communication with anyone outside the vehicle. He stared at that last line for a long time. Anyone. At the bottom of the document, a single handwritten line that hadn't been typed with the rest. Asterisk, follow the instructions completely, and you will be fine. Deviate, and we cannot help you. Asterisk. Dell called Hale back at 8:45. I'm in, he said. He didn't sleep that night. He thought about Connor instead. 16 years old, and Dell couldn't remember the last real conversation they'd had. Not the logistical kind. Pickup times, child support schedules, his ex relaying messages like a diplomatic intermediary. A real one. The kind where Connor looked at him like he was still worth something. $90,000 wouldn't buy that back. But it might buy him a reason to show up and try. He pulled into Cutter Basin before dawn on a Thursday. The facility was not what he expected. He'd imagined a ranch, maybe a loading dock behind a butcher's warehouse. What he found instead was a valley compound ringed with heavy fencing, floodlights burning white against the dark, no signage anywhere on any surface. Workers in plain dark coveralls moved with efficiency and silence. Nobody introduced themselves. Nobody made eye contact. You Morrow? A man stepped out from the loading bay. Weather-beaten face, somewhere north of 60, eyes that had the flat quality of someone who'd stopped being surprised by things long ago. Yeah, Dell said. Pull around back. He jerked his head toward the bay. We load. You sign, you go? Don't take pictures. Don't ask about the facility. Dell pulled around. What went into his trailer over the next 40 minutes was unlike any cargo he'd hauled in 13 years. Full elk carcasses. Bison haunches the size of engine blocks. The smell hit him the moment the bay doors opened. Deep and mineral and wild. Completely unlike the feedlot cattle he'd moved through Nebraska and Kansas. This smelled like something that had lived in open country, breathe cold air, never once stood in a pen. When the loading was done, the old foreman came to his window and handed him the envelope. Thick paper, dark red wax seal pressed with a symbol Dell didn't recognize. "Open it at the clearing," the foreman said. "Not before. You said that already." "I'm saying it again." The foreman held his gaze. "And the thing about weapons, I know Hale told you. I'm telling you too. Don't bring anything. Not a hunting knife, not a flare gun, nothing. You hear me?" Dell looked at him. "I don't own a gun." The foreman nodded slowly like that was the right answer. Then he stepped back from the window and Dell pulled out. The first 3 hours were ordinary. Interstate miles, radio murmur, coffee going cold in the cup holder. He ran through the conditions in his head the way he ran pre-trip inspections, methodically, item by item, making sure nothing was forgotten. He thought about the handwritten note. "Deviate and we cannot help you." He crossed into Oregon at 4:18 in the afternoon. He turned off his phone. The interstate became a state route. The state route became a Tulane County road. The county road became a Forest Service track barely wider than his rig, lodgepole pines pressing in from both sides, so close his mirrors skimmed the branches. The sky disappeared behind canopy. His headlights reached maybe 30 feet ahead. The forest got very quiet. Then his mirror caught movement. It was keeping pace with him, not an animal. He'd driven enough wilderness routes to know how deer and elk moved alongside roads. The erratic, startled bursts, the freeze and bolt pattern. This was different. This was deliberate. Long, fluid strides through dense timber, covering ground the way water moves downhill. Effortlessly, inevitably. Dell's hands tightened on the wheel. He kept driving. "Okay," he said to nobody. Just to hear a voice. "Okay." He slowed slightly. The shape slowed. He accelerated. It accelerated. And then at a bend in the road where his headlights swept wide through a gap in the trees, it stepped close enough that the light caught it fully for 1/2 second. 7 feet. Maybe more. Dark gray fur. Almost charcoal, covering a frame that was wrong in proportions Dell couldn't immediately name. Too broad in the shoulder, too long in the limb, standing upright with a weight and stillness that felt considered. Intentional. But it was the face that stopped his breath. Not monstrous. That was the thing. Not the face of something mindless or hungry. The face was watching him the way you watch something you are trying to understand. And the eyes, amber, pupils vertical like a cat's, catching the headlights, held something that Dell had no word for except awareness. Then it stepped back into the dark. He didn't stop. He didn't scream. He gripped the wheel with both hands until his knuckles ached, and he kept driving because his brain had made an executive decision that forward was the only available direction. More shapes appeared at the tree line, moving parallel. At least 4. Maybe more. The envelope was on the passenger seat. Dell grabbed it, tore the wax seal, unfolded the paper with one hand while his eyes stayed on the road. He read it fast, lips moving. Asterisk pull to the center of the clearing. You will know it when you reach it. Cut all exterior lights. Dome light only. Release the trailer doors remotely. Stay inside the cab. Do not exit. Do not speak. Do not use the horn. Wait until unloading is complete. Do not attempt to communicate with anything outside the vehicle. Asterisk. And then below that, in the same handwritten ink from the bottom of the conditions document. Asterisk, they are fed and calm. You are the supply line, not the supply. Remember the difference. Asterisk. Dell read that last line twice. Then the road opened up. The clearing was exactly as described, a wide, deliberate break in the forest, almost surgical, like something had decided this space would exist, and the trees had simply agreed. He pulled to the center, cut his exterior lights, sat in the pale yellow glow of the dome light with the engine idling and his heart going at twice its normal speed. He released the trailer doors remotely. The click of the latch sounded very loud. Then the footsteps started. Heavy, unhurried. More than one set, approaching from the tree line with the kind of confidence that didn't need to announce itself. Dell watched his side mirrors and made himself breathe. The trailer shifted as weight entered it. He heard movement, not chaotic, not frantic, but organized. The The sound of work being done by something that knew exactly what it was doing. Through his driver's side mirror, in the edge of the dome light's reach, he saw them. 15. Maybe more at the tree line holding back. Different sizes, the largest ones silver-furred and slow-moving, carrying carcasses the way Dell might carry a bag of groceries, with total casual strength. Smaller ones quicker, directing, organizing, moving between the larger ones with clear purpose. They didn't fight over the meat. They distributed it, systematically, with what could only be described as a system. Dell watched for 20 minutes and didn't move. When the trailer was empty, the footsteps receded. The tree line went still. Dell sat in the silence, thinking it was over, thinking he could breathe now, thinking in about 30 seconds he was going to start the process of driving away from this clearing and never coming back. Then one came to his window. Not the largest, not aggressive. It walked to the driver's side with a measured, unhurried pace and stopped 3 feet from the glass and looked at him. Dell looked back. Neither of them moved for a long moment. Up close, the eyes were extraordinary. Amber, going almost gold at the center, pupils contracting slightly in the dome light, and behind them something that Dell would spend months trying to describe and never quite manage. Not human intelligence. Something older than that. Something that had been watching and learning and waiting for longer than Dell had been alive. The creature reached to its side and placed something on the hood of his Peterbilt. Then it tilted its head, a slow, deliberate gesture, and stepped back. Dell looked at the hood, then back at the creature. It was still watching him, waiting. He understood. He could go. He didn't look at what was on the hood until he reached a rest stop 40 miles east, hands still shaking slightly, engine still running because he hadn't been ready to turn it off yet. He stepped out into the cold night air and walked to the front of his rig. It was a carving, small enough to fit in his palm. Wood, dense and dark, worked with a precision that shouldn't have been possible. A perfect miniature of his Peterbilt. Every detail right, the proportions, the cab shape, the stack configuration. And on the front bumper, a small crease. A dent he'd put there himself, backing into a loading dock in Spokane 2 years ago. Dell stood in the parking lot holding it for a long time. His phone powered back on. Hale called almost immediately. Delivery confirmed, Hale said. Everything goes smoothly. Define smoothly, Dell said. A pause. They responded to you, didn't they? It wasn't a question. One of them came to my window, Dell said. Left something on my hood. Silence on the line. When Hale spoke again, his voice had shifted, not warmer exactly, but heavier, like someone choosing words carefully. Mr. Morrow, he said. In 17 drivers over 6 years, that has never happened before. Dell looked down at the carving in his hand. What does it mean? He asked. Hale took a long breath. It means they'd like you to come back. Dell stood there in the cold, the forest long behind him, the carving warm in his palm despite the night air, and somewhere in the part of him that had driven empty roads for 13 years, feeling invisible and worn down and forgotten, something answered. When's the next run? He said. Asterisk, if this story kept you up reading till the end, you already know what to do. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you think the colony really is, and subscribe so you don't miss part 2. Dell's story is just getting started.